Welcome to, or back to, Forgotten Hollywood, the channel where I take you back in time to show you the movies, shows, and actors that have faded over the years. There is perhaps no villain so iconic as Count Dracula. Based on the 1897 novel by Bram Stoker, Dracula has been made and remade in everything from radio to television, music videos to blockbusters. With so many adaptations, I could do an hour-long video on just the character and still not do it justice. Instead, I'm going to compare two notable examples of the famed vampire, starring Bela Lugosi and Gary Oldman. These two films, Dracula in 1931 and Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1992, were very similar by way of plot, but still vastly different movies. For example, in 1931, the sexual tension was so subtle I hardly noticed it at all. In 1992, you're basically beaten over the head with it. This may be a carryover from the vampire films of the 70s and 80s, which were often highly sexualized. Back in the 30s, the censorship code was in force and such things were not permitted. At least not if you wanted your movie to reach mainstream theaters. Another change is the relationship between the characters. In 1931, Mina is the daughter of Dr. Seward. In 1992, Dr. Seward is the love interest of Mina's best friend Lucy, who she stays with while her fiancé is in Transylvania. The later version also adds a sort of love triangle with Lucy trying to choose between three men. This is closer, though not exactly as it is written in the book, but as I said with censorship, the 30s version gives Lucy no love interest and she is just a friend. Beyond the change in relationships, there are also changes in the characters themselves. In the older version, we are introduced to a pleasant young man named Renfield, who goes crazy after being enslaved by the Count. In the 90s, he is already crazy, and little background or context is given to how he got that way. However, the 30s Renfield is shown to be far more conflicted and remorseful, so it is predictable that he would try to warn Mina's loved ones of her coming fate. He even begs Dracula to spare her before his first visit to her room. In the remake, I was thrown by his sudden concern that seemingly came out of the blue. I felt like they expected me to already know who he was and why he was there. This is one thing I get annoyed by in films based on books. The filmmakers need to assume that their audience hasn't read the book and give enough background for them to not only care about the characters, but understand where they are and what is happening. I have watched more than one film that assumed I knew which scene was being skipped and could follow along. I could not, and in one case, never finished the movie out of pure annoyance. One final character that changed over the years is Van Helsing. In the original, he was a professor specializing in the study of strange occurrences relating to vampire attacks. In the remake, he was a medical doctor who treated diseases of the blood. The earlier one was serious, calm, and observant. The latter one was more excitable and prone to dry humor. Both characters provide the explanation for everything that's happening, cluing the audience into vampire lore they may or may not be aware of. I feel like the first Van Helsing, played by Edward Van Sloan, did a better job of keeping the audience informed, while the other, played by Anthony Hopkins, kept the audience entertained. A big adjustment to the plot of Dracula came in the early scenes. In the 90s, Jonathan Harker arrives at Transylvania and meets the Count at his castle. There he is held prisoner, fed on by Dracula's wives, while the villain goes after Lucy and Mina. He eventually escapes with his sanity intact and leads a small band of men against the vampire. However, in the original, John Harker never leaves England or meets Dracula until he's in London. It is Renfield that arrives at the iconic meeting scene on the stairs, and I already said what happened to him in Transylvania. My guess for why they did it this way is time. The latter film was around an hour longer than the first, so they were able to add more to the narration. The 30s version, being just over an hour long total, had to be more selective about what was included in order to tell a clear story. Beyond plot and character were the aesthetics of the film. The image of Bela Lugosi in shadow with light shining only on his eyes is one of the most iconic images in the horror genre, even more than 90 years later. The practical effects are mostly effective, though I have to say the bats on wires are the weakest point. Dracula's powers are mostly demonstrated through camera tricks and careful editing. Low tech, but it works. Shadows are used heavily throughout the film, as well as the unseen. No special effects artist can create an image that will scare you more than the one you come up with in your own mind. In contrast, the later film uses light and color for their style. This could be used to make Mina stand out in a crowd, or make me wonder if the costume designers had ever seen armor outside of a video game. While not available to the filmmakers in 1931, color is a fantastic tool for both costumes and sets. It sets the tone for characters and settings, and a change in lighting can let the audience know when danger is near. As a whole, both films are well crafted in plot, character, and design, though some things are a bit too stylized for my taste. While neither is exactly how it plays out in Bram Stoker's famous novel, the heart of the story is there. The fight to defeat evil and save the innocent. The acting is impressive in both eras, especially Dwight Frye as Renfield in the 30s and Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing in the 90s. Of the two main vampires, I would have to say that I like the portrayal of Bela Lugosi better, but that may be influenced by the fact that he basically established how vampires would be played for decades. Thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on Dracula? Do you prefer the iconic Bela Lugosi or the colorful Gary Oldman? Or is the book more your style? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy this sort of content. Also, click that bell to receive notifications. Let me know if there are other movies you want me to look at, and I will catch up with you next time.